Welcome, everyone. I'm Evan Bennett, Secretary of the FIABCI World Council of Experts. I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. As you may have noticed in our banner, I'm located in North America, and our three panelists are located in Europe, Africa, and Asia, respectively. As the name indicates, FIABCI, the International Real Estate Federation, is a worldwide organization, and this is reflected in our programming, our membership, and here today in our audience. So let me wish you good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're located. Today's webinar was jointly organized by the FIABCI World Council of Managers and the FIABCI World Council of Experts. It's with much gratitude that we acknowledge the ongoing dedication of these two councils to our membership. In particular, we'd like to thank Vanessa de Sousa, President of the World Council of Managers, and Dr. Sopan Pornchukchai, President of the World Council of Experts, for their leadership. I encourage everyone in the audience to visit the professional division page of the FIABCI website. There you'll find the names and photographs of all the council members. Please connect with them. Their contact information is available to all FIABCI members in the membership directory. Our program today will focus on the importance of promoting human health and wellness in the built environment. This is something that has always been important, but our recent experiences with the COVID-19 pandemic have served to make it much more of an immediate priority. I'm sure all of you are familiar with ESG, the integration of environmental, social, and corporate governance factors into investment analysis and decision-making. ESG is a term that was coined in 2005 in a report published by the United Nations. This was followed in 2006 by the launch of the Principles for Responsible Investment, a global initiative that is backed by the United Nations and currently has over 4,700 signatory companies that are committed to putting ESG considerations into practice. These companies are located in over 60 countries. As our members know, FIABCI holds special consultative status with the United Nations, so these issues are very important to us. Over the past couple of years, the S in ESG has very much come to include health and wellness. In order for a building to be considered a responsible, a sustainable, or even an optimized investment, it must promote health and wellness, the holistic well-being of its occupants. COVID-19 has transformed how the real estate sector views health and wellness in the built environment, and it's elevating and sharpening the role that these initiatives play in ESG strategy. We're very honored to have with us today three of the leading thought leaders on these important topics. Olga Adam from Ghana, Peter Loonberg from Thailand, and Garrett Jan Tunisian from the Netherlands. Each speaker will give a 15 to 20-minute presentation in turn, after which we'll form a question and answer panel. Questions entered in the Q&A box during the presentations will be addressed by this panel. So please fill the Q&A box with lots of questions and be sure to indicate if your question is intended for a specific panelist. Our first presenter is Olga Adam. Mr. Adam is an architect, urban planner, and real estate developer. He was instrumental in creating the Certificate for Sustainable Urban Neighborhoods for the German Sustainable Building Council and has developed market-leading projects in both Europe and West Africa that are focused on sustainability and the comprehensive well-being of occupants. Mr. Adam is head of real estate development at Clifton Homes, Ghana's largest residential developer, and is also chairman of the management board of the International Real Estate School's Foundation for African Real Estate Research. Welcome, Olga. Thank you for participating in the webinar. Glad to have you here today. Please begin whenever you're ready.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for the introduction, Evan. I'm very honored to be on this panel today. Hello and greetings to all the participants in this webinar. Thank you very much for taking the time and for your interest to share our thoughts and share our conversation about health and wellness of buildings today. As Evan mentioned, I'm joining you from Ghana, West Africa, where our company, Clifton Homes, has used wellness, or as we call it, urban well-being, as a, let's say, focus for our development, for our designs, for our customer and client relations. And that is not so much in the context only of COVID, but it is in the context of an emerging market in which dense, high-density residential real estate apartments are something of a novelty. And it is necessary for many reasons, sustainability and cost being at the top of the agenda, to densify the urban fabric of Accra, where I'm speaking from. And we were looking for an argument, for a compelling reason for people to move into an apartment rather than to do what everybody, let's say, intuitively has as their live stream regarding their house or their home, and that is to have a house. With the current situation, it always has to be at the outskirts of the city, extremely long commutes with weak infrastructure in this part of the world. It puts an immense burden on the individual, on the families, on the environment. And so we, as developers, feel bringing people to apartments makes all the reason in the world. But we need to give people a bit more than just rational ideas of why they should be joining us in our developments. And so wellness as a compelling reason has proven to be the most convincing in our communication with our clients. So let me take you through a little journey what wellness in relation, in context of buildings means to us and how we were able to implement it in the built environment. So, but before I take you on that little journey, I would like us on how you are feeling today. Are you tired? Are you exhausted? Are you feeling energized, excited, alert? How do you feel? And now let me ask you, what role in that does the building play that you are using at the moment? What is the noise level in the place where you are right now? Which lighting do you have? How is the air quality? Do you have a view? And if so, what is it? When are you sitting down? When was the last time that you felt compelled to get up, to move? It is all these factors that how the buildings that we are using are interacting with us, that are affecting our the way how we feel about ourselves, how healthy we are, our wellness. The impact of buildings on health has long been popularly discussed. We've spoken of the sick building syndrome. People love buildings or hate buildings. They want to work in one place but not in another. But when it then came to the professional focus on buildings, we were for a long time more concerned with technical aspects, elements that were easier to measure and to quantify, harmful substances or energy consumption. It's only recently that we see a more comprehensive discussions of aspects that influence our experience of the built environment, with a focus on health and wellness. And has the professional conversation caught up with the research, or has research caught up with the professional conversation? I think the answer to that is outstanding. But we've seen some quite relevant research emerging recently that has helped us to shape our conversation. One impactful piece of research came out of Harvard University in the year 2015, where they measured the impact of air quality on the performance of office workers. And their findings were that people working in an environment with enhanced air, that means less carbon dioxide and reduced harmful gases, they performed over 100% better on a test of cognitive capabilities than their peers in an office environment with just standard air. And the occupants of green buildings, which also address some aspects of air exchange and of air quality, they perform still 62% better. And that, of course, is very relevant for any company that relies on the capabilities and productivity of its employees. And similarly, the Nobel Prize for Medicine in 2017 being awarded to US researchers that looked into how our bodies regulate how our body's clock is being regulated with the help of light, shows the importance that is being given to this aspect of our interaction with the light sources around us. And the potential, if you think about the interaction between the confluence of the conversation around health and wellness and the built environment, are huge. The World Green Building Council stated in their report on health, well-being, and productivity in offices that for the typical company in the service sector, energy amounts to approximately 1% of the expenditure. Staff costs, on the other hand, are 90%. And if you think about the immense of attention and scientific research of professional the improvements to energy in buildings that have been made over the last 5 to 10 years, which is 1% of the company's expenditure, and then put it into relation to what we can achieve if we focus similarly and give us similar attention to staff costs amounting to 90% of a company's expenditure. Then you see the relevance that this topic is about to have. And just looking at the real estate market already today, so-termed wellness lifestyle real estate has a worth of a value of nearly $120 billion. And workplace wellness is already a market of over $40 billion. So there's a huge potential. And I'm very grateful to FIABCI to table this conversation today, because it is preparing us for this next big thing in the real estate sector. Some people have already very actively embraced it, not just Clifton Homes, but Pavel Trenka, the CEO of FIABCI, an office developer, states that anyone is highly concerned about recruiting and retaining talent and about productivity. So they as developers, believe that creating workspaces that keep people healthy, happy, and energized is a critical service they should offer. Now let's look at some of the aspects that we may want to focus on as we look at the confluence of the wellness conversation with the built environment. One of them is smart lighting. As mentioned in the short excursion to the Nobel Prize winners of 2017, it's the body's clock or the circadian rhythm that is largely determined by the light that we perceive. And the big impact on alertness versus relaxation is the balance of cool blue versus the warm light. And we are all maybe aware of that. Our smartphones offer us the choice to activate a blue light filter and set a timer when the screen turns from bright white to a more beigey, warmer look towards the evening, to give our bodies the signal that now is the time to calm down, to relax, to move towards the sleep phase. And if you think about it, isn't it amazing that our phones offer us that option, but our buildings may not? Yeah. And there is, I think, a big potential for us to move in the direction of consciously tuning buildings to improve the occupants' wellness. That can be done by using certain LED technologies that allow us to influence the spectrum of the light, but it can also be, and it has traditionally also been done by using natural light to reinforce this awareness of the day outside and to allow the different changing life qualities to impact the body. Another aspect already mentioned is the air quality. The removal of harmful gases from a building, or the conscious selection of finishing and fit out not to emit these gases, because most of the time it is stemming from furniture and from carpets. There are experiments conducted with air enhancement, but also very low-tech interventions like air replacement or scents impact our well-being. One thing that has increasingly gained attention is the need to combine the climatization with air replacement, because the cool air and the constant air movement created by air conditioners have the tendency to fool us to think that we are actually enjoying fresh air, but it's not the case. The standard AC only circulates air and cools it, but it does not introduce new air into an environment. So this needs to be coupled with ACs, and this is increasingly being done. Another option that plays into multiple area aspects of wellness is to introduce indoor plants. In India, a study was conducted with workers that were in a building with indoor plants versus their peers in a standard office building, and their productivity was over 20% higher. Now, these indoor plants, that was not the alibi potted plant on the reception desk, but it was rather 1,200 plants in an office of 300 occupants. So it must have been something like working in a botanical garden, but the impact was quite significant. Another aspect that as we are moving out of winter in the northern hemisphere, is probably still very much on everybody's thoughts, is the thermal comfort. And that is not just the temperature, but also radiation draft and humidity play into that aspect. And it is actually the coldness or heat radiated from objects that has the greatest influence on how we gain or lose heat in an environment. So for me as an architect, That means, for example, that I need to be very careful to design surface temperatures and design surfaces that whose temperatures or which temperatures are pleasant, avoiding uninsulated walls, large windows, or direct sunlight. We need to consciously employ air movements, avoiding draft and cold climates, or here in the tropics, facilitating cross ventilation as a way to cool down rooms. And very importantly, also to control humidity by activating humidifiers during the heating periods. Another point that is very relevant for wellness is noise. Many studies have proven the harmful effect of noise, but what complicates the matter is that it is a very, very subjective sensation. If you think about the sound of playing children, parents, grandparents, and children themselves usually find this a tremendously joyful sound, whereas not everybody will join that perception. Some people love the sound of revving sports cars. Others prefer the sound of a bicycle bell. So you see, noise is one person's noise is not everybody's person's noise necessarily. So when we employ sound design, we do something that we've learned from concert halls and similar environments, is to consciously use sound absorbing materials just to keep the noise level down, which universally is accepted. Let's say that and too much of sound very quickly then turns the perception to noise. And the other one is to facilitate a choice of noise. What we mean by that, it must be possible for tenants, for people using offices to consciously choose which level of sound, which level of noise they want to be exposed to. And that is simple interventions like soundproof apartment stores or the availability of quiet workspaces. And of course, on the building level, the distribution of functions according to the noise tolerance. And then wellness is immediately associated with nature. Yeah? And we find that providing nature and green spaces in a hot and dusty environment like Accra, the capital of Ghana, where most of our projects are, is something very compelling to residents. And it is not just the opportunity or the option to use a green space, but also to see it from their apartment. It's very attractive for people. It's a good counterbalance to the hustle bustle of the city outside. There are a couple of more aspects that contribute rather to the wellness of residents in our buildings: the active lifestyle, the sense of community and safety. But let me show you how we integrate this in our buildings to maybe give a little bit more substance to the otherwise to theoretical concept. And let me say from the beginning, none of this is rocket science. Yeah, I've avoided to select these technical solutions that we have integrated in our buildings as well. But as I tried to explain in the beginning, wellness, urban well-being, as the focus of our developments is permeating into all these little design decisions that we are making, all the ways how we are interacting with our customers to create a holistic experience. And that doesn't need to be super expensive. That does not need doesn't require more of our time, but it is this conscious integration of the concept into our products that I think makes a big difference. For example, designing for thermal comfort and noise reduction. If you look at this building a little bit closer, you will notice that the apartments have large balconies. Of course, that is because it is wonderful to enjoy a warm summer evening and sitting on a wide balcony. But it also means that every window has a large overhang, and there's very little direct sunlight that reaches the inside of the apartment. Because here, with daily temperatures averaging between 30 to 35, 36 degrees, and the sun being extremely intense, yeah, you try to avoid direct sunlight. Then you may ask, and another point is wherever possible at the corners of buildings, we have windows in more than one side of a room to allow cross ventilation. Now you may ask, why do you see this bleak straight wall in the center of the building? This gap between the two buildings is where the ramp goes down to the car park. And we decided that the noise of the cars coming up in the morning would be more detrimental to people's enjoyment of the apartments than having yet another window. So this is why on such specific locations, we prioritize noise reduction over daylight or cross ventilation. Another important aspect is the integration of green spaces. Green is rapidly disappearing in the city that we work in. But for example, in this project that we recently completed, we managed on an area of total project area of 3 acres. We managed to keep 1 acre available as communal gardens that are accessible and available for residents to enjoy. And it is now, actually, it's been handed over a good year ago. It's much more grown in, and it's really a very pleasant green environment that people actively use during the evening and morning hours when the sun is not too intense, but that they can enjoy from their apartments, the view of which they can enjoy from their apartments here the day round. And it sets us apart from the competition. It is certainly one reason to us being able to outperform the market. The daylight aspect is something that I just want to mention. Even as we are trying not to allow too much direct sunlight into the apartments, we still employ or use large windows for the joy of daylight and the views of nature. So we're trying not to have the one aspect of wellness, thermal comfort, negatively impact other areas. And then we are consciously trying to facilitate an active lifestyle. Of course, the most effective way to do that would be to delay the repair of the elevator for a couple of days when it has stopped working. But we're not going quite that far. But we have large gyms in all of our developments, and we put them in the most prestigious and spectacular locations. This is a rendering for a project that is just under construction. The gym is on the 12th floor, overlooking Accra towards the west. It would have been very easy to turn this into a penthouse and to sell it for $1.5 million. And we decided to make it a gym. But that's not just because we are such wonderful wellness-minded people, but because, like I was saying in the beginning, you need to create a compelling reason to choose an apartment over a standalone house. Of course, cost is one point, location is another one, but we feel something like the opportunity to use a gym and a pool as well on the roof terrace overlooking the city is something that attracts people and is that little bit that then shifts the needle towards investing in an apartment. The other bit is creating a sense of community. Ghanaians are very, very community-minded people. A lot of times that means though the family It means the church that they worship at, or the school peer group. And we are trying to translate that now into our developments. They're usually larger, several hundred apartments. And so then we include a residents-only cafe. We are happy if that's possible, like in this image, combined with the gym, because that then allows people just to stop on the way or coming back from the gym, have a smoothie, have a coffee, meet their neighbors, and that creates a sense of belonging, creates a sense of safety that again we feel allows people to feel comfortable and improves their wellness. So with all of that, I hope I was able to give you an idea of how we incorporate wellness into our design decisions. Hope I gave rise to some of the to some more questions, which, as Evan was saying, we would love to answer after all three of the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Olger. We really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us on these important topics. And as Olger was saying, if anyone has questions, please, by all means, enter them into the Q&A box. We'll address all the questions for all of the panelists at the end of the webinar today. So with that, our next presenter is Peter Loonberg. Mr. Loonberg is an energy engineer with over 14 years of experience. He has worked and lived in several countries, such as Sweden, China, and Thailand. He has extensive experience in district heating, district cooling, energy efficiency, renewable energy, demand-side management, and sustainable urban development. Currently, Mr. Loonberg is the Executive Director at the Asia Pacific Urban Energy Association in Thailand. In this role, he is leading the association to explore, develop, and promote sustainable energy in the Asia Pacific region. So we're very honored to have you here today, Peter. Thank you for participating in our webinar, and please begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Ivan, for the introduction. And thank you also, Holger, for your presentation earlier. I'm pleased to be here today. I'm going to share my screen first. Right, so I hope that everyone can see my screen properly. Yes, so my name is Peter Loonberg, and I am the Executive Director of the Asia Pacific Urban Energy Association, which is a member-based industry or sector association based in Bangkok, Thailand. And my topic today would be, I will talk about how we can meet the rising cooling demand in buildings. So I have my approach will be towards wellness in buildings will be towards energy and how cooling and energy affects our environment. First, I would like to address the rising cooling demand. So today, cooling produces about 10% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, and about 80% of those emissions comes from energy consumption. Emissions from energy consumption. The other 20% come from direct emissions from refrigerants, from air conditioners and chillers. That has these refrigerants has a very large global warming potential, much larger than carbon dioxide. Say on the graph to the right here, you can also see the electricity consumption of air conditioning systems in residential and commercial buildings by country and region, and you can see a big difference here comparing 1990 and 2017. You have the biggest growth of electricity consumption is in China, but also countries like India and regions like Southeast Asia has the cooling demand has really grown a lot. So the increasing cooling demand is driven by economic and population growth in the hottest part of the world. As you can see here, marked, the more red on this map, the more cooling degree days, or the higher cooling demand those areas have, or the hotter climate these areas have. And this graph here shows, the line in the graph shows the number of cooling degree days, basically showing the climate in different countries. And then you can see the bars showing the utilization rates of air conditioned units for households. So it gives an indication of how, how on the different cooling markets in these countries. So looking at Thailand, which has about 4,000 cooling degree days, which is similar to neighboring countries like Singapore and Malaysia. Thailand has only a AC utilization rate of about 30%, whereas in Singapore, Malaysia, the number is around 80%. So there's a gap there, and this gap will, definitely closed as the economy in Thailand grow and people buy more and more ACs, or there will be more and more developments in cities that needs cooling. If you look on the right side of the graph, you see also countries like China, Japan, and Korea, which have much cooler climate. They still have a high utilization rate of ACs because of their warm summers as well. And you also see the potential for cooling growth in countries like India, Vietnam, Indonesia, which has very little usage of ACs. Other trends to follow is that, we have a growing, other trends to follow is that the climate in the world is getting warmer. We have, global warming, and looking on the graph to the left, you can see there that the number of cooling degree days increases. Here's an example from the ASEAN countries compared to Japan. And the middle graph shows also that the economies are growing, and the GDP per capita here, in how the growth of GDP per capita changes in ASEAN and Japan. And on the right, you can see that the air conditioning ownerships also is increasing a lot in Asia, ASEAN region, much faster than in Japan, that already have a more mature market. I just want to mention a little bit about cities. Cities occupy only 2% of the world's landmass, but they consume over 2/3 of the world's energy, and they account for more than 70% of the global CO2 emissions. So when we address energy consumption and mitigating climate change and reducing carbon emissions, we really have to address work towards cities. And of course, we have still an ongoing trend, is the urbanization trend. And today, about 60% of the world's population live in cities, and this number is expected to grow until around about 70% in 2050. And so this trend has also led to the growth of megacities, basically large metropolitan areas with more than 10 million, a population with more than 10 million people. So today there are 33 megacities globally, and 17 of those are in the Asia Pacific. In 2030, it's expected to be 43 of the megacities globally, and 25 in the Asia Pacific. So energy consumption in buildings. So buildings stands for about 30% of the final energy consumption in the Asia Pacific region. And they also buildings account for a large part of greenhouse gas emissions as well in cities. In Hong Kong it's about 60%, in New York 70%, Tokyo is 40% for commercial buildings. And space cooling is really the fastest growing use of energy in buildings, and accounted for 90% of the total electricity used in buildings, which is quite a big difference from 13%, which was the case in 1990. So one way to cool down buildings in areas where you have high energy demand and high energy density, which occurs in cities, especially when you have larger and larger cities, is district cooling system with actually, or you can say that it's centralized cooling systems that supply chill water or cooling to more than one building. So you have a centralized production plant producing chilled water and supplying buildings with chilled water through a pipeline. So so there will be no air-conditioned units or chillers inside the buildings, only heat exchangers to basically transfer the energy to the apartments or the office buildings or shopping malls or what kind of building it is. There are several benefits with these kind of systems. District cooling systems are up to 50% more efficient than conventional cooling system. This is it's possible because you're able to really maximize temperature control, distribution, and also heat exchanging of energy in the buildings. You have 24/7 personnel operating the system 24/7. There's also maintenance plans that are looking after the system to really keep the high efficiency for a long period of time. District cooling system can also, with district cooling system, allows also to install 15 to 30% less cooling capacity than otherwise needed if every building or every apartment would have their own AC unit. So that's a huge saving in terms of investment in the production plant. It's also one reason you can do that as well is because maybe you have mixed categories of buildings attached to the system. You can have residential buildings and commercial buildings, and they use energy or cooling different times of the day. I will show a graph about that a bit later. So district cooling system also allows for the integration of, for example, renewable energy. But you can say that this kind of system can really operate as energy storage system. So with that, I mean, you can, if you have access to, electricity from wind or solar, when you have an excess of renewable energy from wind or solar, the price of electricity is low, you can produce your chilled water and actually store it in a thermal energy storage tank or an ice storage. And then you can use that later on. So that's a way of integrating more renewable energy to buildings and to cities, and which is very beneficial, of course. So that's one. When of course energy efficiency is also goes hand in hand with renewable energy, because the less energy you use, the higher share of renewable energy you can have in your mix. It's also possible to integrate or use natural cold sources or like water, lake water, seawater, treated sewage water, and a common way is to use it as a heat sink, basically to cool down, instead of having cooling towers that transmit the heat from the chillers to the surrounding environment. You can basically cool your chillers with water, and that also creates wellness in terms of less noise, but also less energy consumption from the chillers, because you can reduce the temperature in the chillers. Yes, I mentioned a little bit about thermal energy storage. So with that, you can also reduce peak loads basically by charging or produce chilled water off peak, and then you use it later. You can use it when you have peak load. You already have stored your chill water that can be used at a later point. It plays a vital role to mitigate global warming and has the potential. I mean, now I'm talking about cooling, but district cooling plays a role in this. Energy efficient cooling and the reduction of HFC refrigerants, or phasing out HFC refrigerants, have the potential to reduce global warming with up to 1 degree Celsius. So, and this is from the Montreal Protocol. So it's actually come from UNEP. So district cooling, has the benefit of being very efficient, but also using much less refrigerants in the system, maybe half of the amount compared to if you would have AC units in ACs in every apartment or office building, office floor. So one way district cooling system use less refrigerants. The other benefit is that you have much better monitoring of the refrigerants that is located in your chiller. So there will be much less leakage as well. So you have that benefit as well. Another benefit that is clearly linked to wellness in our buildings and in our cities, and is that reduced heat urban island effect, which basically means that all the air-conditioned units are heating up our environment, because all the condensers just pumping out heat to our environments. So that leads actually to an increase of temperature in cities. So if you have a centralized cooling system like district cooling, that problem will be reduced either by having basically by optimizing and having cooling towers in one spot, or if you use a natural cold source, you would remove that fully, basically. So it will have much less impact to the urban heat island effect. These kind of systems have also very long lifespan, up to 50 years. So that also has a good impact on buildings and also the value of buildings. There's a huge market potential as well. Of course, for central business district areas, transit-oriented district areas, industries, industry zones, airports, hospitals, and data centers. So this graph shows how you can share the load between residential buildings and commercial buildings. You have energy demand for residential buildings in evenings, nights, and mornings, and commercial buildings would be during daytime. So you can maximize the usage of the cooling system. So I want to show a few case studies, examples from the region in Asia. The first one is the Ferestias Project, which is here in Bangkok, Thailand, which is under construction at the moment. It's a mixed used area with residential and commercial buildings. The cooling capacity will be 70 megawatts when it's finished, and the cooling system is expected to be up to 49% more efficient than a conventional AC system. And one other benefit is, of course, reduced urban heat island effect. And you can see on the picture on the right there, you have balconies in condominiums where instead of having these loud vibrating condensers just blowing out hot air, you can have a quiet garden in your balcony. So that's a huge improvement of your wellness, of course. Yeah, it will have 38% reduced installed capacity, 50% reduction of refrigerant volume, and the cost will be for residential units is expected to be about 20%. And this is how it will look like from above. You see how the piping system is they will utilize utility tunnels to have the pipelines that goes from the chiller plant to the buildings. Another project is the One Bangkok Project, which is Thailand's largest fully integrated district. It's a very large development. It will consist of 16 buildings, including offices, hotels, shopping malls, and residential buildings. It has a high focus on sustainability. It's a LEED certified building, and it will have a district cooling system that will be, it was chosen because it's the most efficient way of produce chilled water for the area. It also will use recycled wastewater as makeup water to the cooling towers. So that's another way of integrating waste energy waste water that to benefit, you could benefit, so integrating energy in an environmental system together. So this is also part, we like to mention this project because it's a typical example of how you can use urban planning. When you plan new development in city, you really want to optimize energy consumption, reduce environmental impact, and create, the best environment for the residents in that area. So this is a good example of that. And but it's also easy because it's one project, it's one development, it's one land that has one owner. So they can really optimize everything, which is much more difficult if you have different owners. But so urban planning is very important, developing sustainable cities, but this is a good example. The last example is in Hong Kong. The old airport called Kai Tak is now a development zone. So that will have a large mixed use buildings. So it's a large area, and district cooling was chosen because it's the most efficient way of cooling down the area. It's first of its kind in Hong Kong. So the capacity in the first phases will be about 280 megawatts, and they will connect 50 consumer buildings in the system. So it's expected to be 35% more efficient than a conventional air conditioning, air-cooled air conditioning system. This system will utilize actually seawater as a heat sink. So there are no cooling towers. So they'll use seawater to cool down the chillers. So another phase has been added to this project. So another 178 megawatts have been added to a fourth project. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I will summarize. So cooling produces about 10% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, and it's the fastest growing use for energy in buildings, and already stands for 30% of final energy consumption in the Asia Pacific. And I mean, now we have a trend where governments are pledging to be carbon neutral in 2050. So there is a bit, there are more and more focus on energy efficiency, integrating more renewable energy, and that will only increase. Thailand will be carbon neutral in 2050. So they will increase the focus on energy efficiency and of course renewable energy. So, and green buildings and building certification is also getting more popular, and that's another way to integrate the district cooling as a very energy efficient system. So just to end my presentation, I will say that district cooling system can they increase value to the buildings, they increase the lifespan of the buildings, and gives financial and environmental benefits for people. Thank you. That was my presentation. You have my contact details there. Let me know if you have any questions or anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. These district cooling systems. They're quite amazing. So it's an excellent introduction to these systems. Thank you for that. So let's move on to our final presenter, Garrett Jan Tunisian. So Mr. Tunisian is a consultant at Project Advisors and Managers in the Netherlands. His expertise covers matters related to building health, sustainability, energy technology, data collection, cost structures, and management. Just to mention a few of his accreditations, Mr. Tunisian is a WELL AP and faculty member, a LEED AP and fellow nominee, and the Living Building Challenge Ambassador for the International Living Future Institute. So needless to say, he has a wealth of knowledge on these important topics. Garrett Young, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Well, and thank you too, Evan, for the introduction, and also thank you for Holger and Peter for their interesting presentations. And also special thanks to the FIABCI for giving me the honor to present on this webinar. So, well, let's move along. Well, it was already mentioned, I'm a consultant in energy sustainability and health in the built environment. That's the company Traject is about. We are focused on all the aspects of real estate and buildings in a matter of the economic or the environmental impact, and that's what we call the 361 gezond gebouw, which is apparently Dutch for healthy building. So that's what we are about. I will leave you with the three important takeaways, which is my presentation is about. It's about the health of the well-building standard, obviously, how the standard has been built up, and it's also focused on the occupant health and well-being, obviously. Well, it has some financial impact. We have seen several financial impact details in the previous slides. I will focus a bit more on how the investment in occupants will relate to other financial impacts, and I will emphasize a few details by example how the well-building standard works in a bit more detail and how we can apply them. But first of all, we have to realize that we spend about more than 90% of our time indoors in buildings, whether it's a home, a living, a residential building, or a office building. It's about 90% of our time we spend on the indoor environment. So the International Well-Building Institute, which I'm a faculty on, which actually means that I'm allowed to provide courses, training courses, and presentations anywhere worldwide, actually. So if we take a look at the state of health of a human being, that's determined by a few aspects. Obviously, there are more aspects, but mainly four categories. For about 7%, it's determined by the genetics, so nothing can influence that one. But for about 12%, it's influenced by the access to the medical care, obviously. So that's quite an important factor. But almost the same size of influence has been determined by the lifestyle and the healthy behavior. So there's the human being, how the human being acts within the buildings or outside the building. That's the behavior part. And there's also the biggest influence determines the state of health, and that's the physical and the social environment. So what the well-building standard does is how to determine how to impact the health and well-being and productivity in buildings. And they took a look at the human being. So what physical systems are influenced and what's the human being made of. And we have recognized several physical systems, and the building standard has peeled those physical systems off and translated into several categories, which they call concepts. And the building standard consists of 10 of these concepts. It's nourishment, water. Well, we have seen a few details already in the presentation of Holger. And the building standard calls them the features, and some of them are required. They don't earn points, and some are optimizations, which actually could deliver a product point, and the amount of points determines the certification level. If it's a bronze, silver, gold, or platinum, well, that varies obviously for each project, and that's in fact the construction of the building standard as a rating system to certify a building. But if you take a look at the investment and how the investments relate to the building standard, so we have seen in the previous presentations a discussion about the energy optimization or the operational cost optimization. But if you take a look at the cost of the salary and the benefits of the staffing, then we're talking about these ratios. So I won't say it's not important what we have seen in the previous presentation, but if we talk about the return on investment, the reduction and the optimization of productivity and health and well-being, there's a much more influence being available. So if you take a look at break-even calculation, then when it comes to certification, we have an initial certification, and it also encompasses some annually periodic costs, which are returning. So if you take a look at the returning cost at operation of a building and the operation of an office within the building, we have an initial cost like this and an operational cost. And then by example, we take the staffing cost for 120,000 euros per person during the exploitation. So if you take a look at an increase of the productivity, we have seen in the presentation of Holger that it could be 5% or 10%, or I think it could be even 15% improvement in productivity. But if we take a look at an increase of productivity for about 0.5%, that's very conservative, then we are able to establish an improvement of 600,000 euros per year, which means it has a return of payback time for less than 2 years. So that's something very interesting to realize. As technicians, we are often used to talk about euros per square meter when it comes to the investment in the certification cost or implementation of some technical measures like the lighting or the ventilation. Then we are translating the cost towards the floor area. But we should get rid of that way of thinking. We should start to get thinking about investment per building occupant and how the occupant is going to behave. So that's the relation to the productivity. I can explain and I can demonstrate a certification project which has achieved platinum certification in the Netherlands. The company is a health insurance company, so that helps a lot. And this building has earned 93 points out of 110 points, and in 2020, and that has been awarded platinum certification. So this is the team who established the certification process, and obviously we are keeping social distance, but we are not looking happy. But we were very, very happy because we did a lot of we have put in a lot of effort in it. So a few details, a few examples. We have discussed the catering company, how to improve the quality of the food, being a biological food, being less fat, more fruit, and also the sizing of the plates and stuff like that. So that's discussed with the catering company. We have established attractive staircases, like with motivating images on the walls and aesthetic pleasing lighting. And we also explained how the building occupants, the staffing, could choose to take a healthy walk to the outside environment to find nature during their break times. So we have established many other things. So the well building standard, those 10 concepts, they focus not only on the design, like the lighting or the ventilation or the staircase design. It's not only the design, but also includes the operation of the building. If there are a lot of healthy choices to be made during the operation of the building. And it also includes a certain amount of features which are focused on the behavior of the building occupants. So if we take one example, one of the behavioral issues is to motivate the building occupants to travel by bike on their towards the office. So the bicycle storage has to be facilitated in a sufficient way. So let me explain a bit about the Netherlands and bicycles. We have a strange relationship with bicycles at the end of the day, because we have more bicycle tracks in the Netherlands rather than any other country worldwide, and we have more bicycles than people in the Netherlands. So there's a bit strange that a US-based standard demands a certain way to stimulate bicycle use, especially when it comes to bicycle storage. Because of our relationship with the bicycles in the Netherlands, this is how we store our bicycles at the railway stations. So that's a tough situation. At the end of the day, it's easier to achieve these measures in a building in Dubai, just facilitating bicycle storage, rather than changing the mindset of the people in the Netherlands in the way they are used to store their bicycles. Now back to the happy building of the VGZ, we call the insurance company. Let me enlighten a bit about the concept light. This is the original situation, which was the existing building, and we changed it towards a more attractive and more improved lighting situation. So to improve the lighting quality, there are many factors being influenced, whether it's the color temperature, which are more technical details like the lux level or the flicker rate or the position and the contrast, but also influences the type of work being done at certain locations, or the controls being which enables the occupants to influence the type of lighting and the quality of lighting. And it also obviously depends on the amount of daylight entering the floor area. So we ended up with a new lighting plan, which resulted in well, in this example, it has a lot more lux level than the previous situation. So that's a good starting point. But we looked also into all those other details, and we ended up with a retrofit situation, because the technical equipment in the building itself, it's limited the amount of light fixtures being extended. But to establish an improvement like this, we had to hire and to get in contact with the light consultant, but also with the light engineer, but also the interior architect and the facility management staff, obviously the owner, because someone has to pay for it. And the most important part is regarding the acceptance of the occupants. So we spent a lot of time in educational materials to inform the occupants about the improvements being made in the office, but also how to cope with the certain type of improvement. And regarding the lighting fixtures, we created a mock-up that informed the occupant about the circadian daylight rhythm, and also how the new lighting situation is able to support the circadian rhythm of the building occupant. So there was an improvement in lighting quality, but also in the influence of on the circadian rhythm of the building occupant. And that's quite important because that's explained within the WELL building standard. The circadian rhythm influences the day and nighttime rhythm. So if the amount of sleep and the quality of sleep can be influenced during better light during the day, then a lot of productivity improvement can be expected because people sleep better and are more will remain more productive during the day. So that's one example about one of the concepts being addressed by the WELL building standard. So put it in short, the WELL building standard is all focused about the occupant health and well-being by the 10 concepts. And I explained a bit about the financial impact, the investment in occupants. Those investments will be paid back within 2 years, even including the certification cost, which could be experienced as quite high. But when we relate them towards the increase of productivity, then it will be paid back within 2 years. And I also explained the WELL building standard, which could be used as an instrument. It could be used as an instrument, as an engagement tool, how to convince other peoples, like whether it's an investor or an owner or the facility management staff, or most important, the building occupant. The standard and structure like this are leveraging the importance and are very possibly being used as an engagement tool. So, and well, when we talk about a certain amount of features, those features are providing a lot of background information to establish improvements. So that's whether you're certifying the building or not, just take a look at the WELL building standard, and a lot of improvement opportunities are being explained. So what we need to learn to do is to find those opportunities and apply those improvements. So that's about it. This is my presentation. If you like more information about the WELL building standard, please go to wellcertified.com. And if you want to stay in the know and want to be notified about my activities, please use the QR code reader of your smartphone. It will direct you to the LinkedIn page and we can connect. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Garrett Young. Really appreciate the presentation. Now, if I can have all of the speakers turn on your cameras and unmute your microphones. We are actually coming up on the end of our allotted time, but I think we do have time for a few questions. So let's definitely go ahead with our Q&A session. And you know, Garrett Young, I really appreciate that you mentioned return on investment in your presentation, because I often find when I'm talking to investors or owners that sometimes they're skeptical. They think, well, health and wellness in the built environment, that's nice, but you know, I don't want to spend the extra money. I don't want to throw money away. But there is a lot of evidence out there to show that there is quite a good return on investment. I've seen some studies that suggest there's sometimes a premium of between 4 and 7% in rental rates, for example, in office buildings, if it's a green building. And I jotted down a note here, bear with me 1 second. So this is actually something I just read. Yes, it's from the United Nations, actually, the UNEP Finance Initiative. They did a survey recently of institutional investors in commercial real estate, in the commercial real estate sector. and they reported that 61% of the respondents use some form of building certification system to track how their assets are impacting health and wellness. For example, well building certification. And of course, there's another one, Fitwell, that's used quite a bit. But I think this just goes to show that, there is a lot of interest in these topics. And one thing that really I think is becoming more apparent, whereas perhaps prior to COVID-19, there was such a thing as a green premium, where green buildings could achieve a premium in rental rates, and conversely, their market value would increase. It seems like that is shifting a little bit, and now instead of a green premium, there's almost a brown discount. If your building isn't green, then you're going to lose value. You're not going to be able to attract the best tenants, and as you're not going to be able to command the best rental rates. So you're going to lose market value. And I just wonder, is that sort of in keeping with what the three of you have seen, in the real estate sector recently? And maybe just if you could elaborate a little bit on that, Garrett Young, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, sure. Well, we have been introduced with the EU taxonomy, which rates the green quality of investments. And there's also a real estate part on that one being addressed. So to say yes, green buildings are being quantified in a financial way by means of the EU taxonomy. And as part of the EU taxonomy, there's also a ESG part connected to it. So there's a connection also with the social part. So that's where the health and well-being certification programs fit into the EU taxonomy, which is regulation by the European Committee. And regarding sustainability rating, those programs also help directly with the environmental part of the EU taxonomy. So yes, there is a relationship, and there will be a stronger relationship between the financial effort being put in to increase the sustainability of the buildings. And it will be also awarded somehow. So the effect you already mentioned, Evan, which is an increase in rentals. It will be more sold space, more rented space, and it will be rented sooner rather than an uncertified building. So there's no distinction between the brown certified. Well, it's not certified at all, obvious sometimes, but it's the difference between certified and non-certified. If a certified building expresses their effort they put in to become certified, then tenants will be, it will be more attractive to tenants, and that's proven already. And with the war on staffing, the people, the war on talent. Sorry, I was searching for the word. With the war on talent in our minds, it becomes important day by day that people have to invest in attracting good staffing and keep them interested in working at your office location. So that's where all those efforts pays back by attracting and keeping those talented people working for your company.
Peter, if I could follow up maybe on your presentation, maybe you could clarify who pays for the infrastructure needed for district cooling, because It seems it's shared by multiple buildings. So how is that paid for?
Yeah, but in those cases that I showed you in Thailand, the two projects I showed you, the one Bangkok and the Ferestias Project, they are private developments. So it would be the project themselves that are financing both the cooling system as well as they're financing other utilities in this project. So maybe it's a little bit different in Hong Kong, because then it's is a more a public, let's say the utility part of that project is a public finance project, so it's basically financed by the government of Hong Kong, you can say. So, but it depends from case to case, you can say. But I just wanted to address your question earlier there. Then, I mean, when we talk to developers, like the two projects in Bangkok that I mentioned, I mean, green building certification is a must, basically, to stay competitive in the market. I mean, especially when these are very long-lived projects. So it's really a must. I mean, and that trend is increasing, especially when you have more and more awareness in the public. You have more policies coming from national governments, local governments to address energy and environmental issues. So I think it will continue to grow.
Thank you. So Olga, maybe following up on your presentation, we did get one question during your presentation. So in the example project that was included in your presentation, so was that for social housing? And if so, how is the funding established to add the health and wellness features?
Thanks for that question. All the residential real estate that we're doing is open market, so there is no government subsidies incorporated in these developments. So that just drives home the point that we need to be very, very mindful of what we create and what people are willing to pay for. And we have to keep in mind that Ghana is a maturing market. Aspects like the certification of buildings have been tried in some pilot projects with limited success possible, where it was for office real estate that then was catering to international companies, international institutions that were possibly by the ESG targets mandated to rent in certified buildings. But even there, if you look around, most companies, the international institutions, do not even take up these office spaces because they are expensive. So what we try to do is to be very, very mindful of what people really value. And as I mentioned in the presentation, to create that added benefit, what they can enjoy, what they have access to in one of our projects. And our competition is not necessarily the apartment block next door, but our competition is the standalone house or the semi-detached house somewhere out in the periphery, which is so deeply ingrained in what people aspire to. But then if they look at the life's realities, it becomes a little bit less desirable. And then we need to create something that is so much more attractive that they then decide to invest with us. And the narrative that resonates most with people, what we realized, is around wellness, about urban well-being. Is creating a real estate where customer focus does not end with the sales team with the moment that the contract is being signed, but where it is really guiding our design decisions from the very inception of the building through to the construction and then the operation of the building. Just keeping in mind what makes people feel comfortable, what makes people enjoy being in those spaces that we create. So return on investment for us is very clear. I think I can say that without boasting. We are market leaders in the residential space, and that is, I would like to say as an architect, that is because of my beautiful designs, but unfortunately, I think the truth is a little bit closer to that people just enjoy those spaces, and that has a lot to do with our wellness focus.
Well, I'm sure your designs have some impact as well. So congratulations on the success.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, with that, these are certainly very important issues, and at FIABCI, we're very appreciative of all the information that the three of you have provided to us today. Thank you so much for your presentations. And I want to thank the audience for your attention, and especially thank the FIABCI World Council of Managers and the World Council of Experts for putting together this webinar. So I just want to wish all of you, as I said at the beginning, depending on where you're located, it could be morning, afternoon, or evening. So